How about I do the next day and, you know. I think it's really good. How are you going to get to our place? Yeah. We get back over, we get 5 days, we'll be up. What? It'll be Anna's birthday next month. 29th. The guys are going to cancel the lunch and came with the names. That's our hope that we in our house. So cancel that. Huh? You're busy, right? How is the department, okay? Yeah. That's the answer. We're going to take together. That's it. Yeah, I'll be fine by next Thursday. That would be so many days. I'll wait a date for her. I'm not going to be waiting. And how much we invested in October, hello, how are you? The bird has COVID now. We woke up this morning not feeling good, coughing, we start discussing it and we start forward. So I'm going to cancel the birthday luncheon with that. Yeah. That's what we're trying to have. Next Thursday, I'll do it. Let's just play it. I'll take you your thing. Well, I don't feel like reading right now, but I will do it probably next week. I'll probably do it again. But with her having children now too, you know, she has to isolate herself for 5 days. So, and then that's Wednesday done. Oh, they have to. Yeah. I think they'll be good. No, I don't think that. We'll do that today, but we'll do it in October. When everything settles down a little bit. Well, I've done my 5 days now, but I'm still wearing my mask because I don't need to.
Yeah. I'm just going to be the process, so I thought coffee each year and have over so it's doing right now. So shooting the people around shoot to be so ready for about we should verify get it.
Very good. Thank you, sir.
You probably heard my spiel, so.
Yeah, no, that's good. Thank you. We'll call the meeting to order. On the First Nations land acknowledgement, the TNRD acknowledges that we connect with many First Nation communities across our vast regional district. And today we are located in the Cumberland-Shrepnick territory situated within the unceded ancestral lands of the Shrepnick Nation. The TNRD appreciates the partnership that we have with the Cumberland-Shrepnick and respect the territory and land which today we gather. Any additions or deletions from the agenda? If not, somebody move the agenda. All in favor? Opposed? None. Thank you. And the minutes of the March the 10th meeting. All in favor? Under reports, I'll turn it over to Deanna.
Thank you, Chair Kershaw. So the committee has before them the new terms of reference for the Electoral Area Directors Committee. We've now moved all of our committee mandates and scopes into a consistent terms of reference template. So there's very little change from what would have been in the previous Electoral Area Directors Committee bylaw. We've sort of put a little bit more details in the role and mandate of the committee, in addition to increasing the frequency of meetings for the Electoral Area Directors Committee, because we envision more items going to this committee with the deletion of several other committees that we had. So if there's any other input or feedback or suggested changes to the terms of reference from the committee, we'll take that.
Sorry, Director Watson.
Just out of curiosity, moving other business into the EA directors meetings, will the EA, and we may have 5 meetings, we may have 4, or will they be part of our annual stipend, or will they be we be paid for by each meeting? Inquiring minds want to know.
Through you, Chair. I think that Doug was supposed to join us, but he's sick today, so he's going to try to join us by Zoom. But he did tell me that he has built in the extra meetings from the EA meetings within the annual indemnity, so that'll be part of it.
Any other? Director Elliott, and then Director Elliott. Yes.
So my understanding of this EA Directors Committee now takes in utilities and no? because we don't, in the new procedure bylaw, we don't have a utilities committee and solid waste, and I thought that the electoral area directors were going to be the only people on the utilities.
Through the chair to Director Elliott. No, so we've removed any references to specific committees in the board procedure bylaw, just in case over time the names of committees or types of committees change. And so the report that went to the board back in July, the utilities committee remains the same and the solid waste committee remains the same. So no changes there. It's the emergency management and protective services committee that was no longer in existence, as well
Yeah.
as the economic development and recreation committee. So any items that would have gone to those committees will now come to the electoral area director committees.
Okay, thank you very much.
Director Rice.
Thank you, Chair. Just a quick clarification, if you will. Standing Committee 4.1, a member shall be appointed every 2 years by the chair of the TNRD board in accordance with procedures. I was trying to see exactly what that means. As a standing committee, member shall be appointed every 2 years by the chair of the TNRD board.
Through the chair to Director Rice. So in the legislation, standing committees are committees of the board chair. And so the appointments are the discretion of the board chair. And so you will recall recently we've changed how often committee members now get appointed. So rather than every year, it's every 2 years now.
Okay,
I updated that in the board procedure bylaw.
okay, thanks.
Thank you. Director Gillis.
A point of order, Mr. Chair. I'm just wondering if there's anybody who could, besides me, who's having difficulty hearing.
Yes, me.
If the volume could go up.
Thank you. How's that? Any better? Yeah.
It's a little better.
How is that coming up? Everybody here now?
Now I hear you.
Yeah, okay.
Find out.
That better? Thank you. Is there any further discussion on this? Director Schaefer?
I'd like to, 4.1, where they're saying it's appointed every 2 years by the chair. It's all of the electoral area directors, so why is it not just as one said that in there?
Good point. That's a good point, Director Schaefer. I think because we were just copying the same template, so you're right. The composition will we can actually remove that. The composition will always automatically be all electoral area directors. Good catch.
Scott?
Chair, I see that Mr. Ray's joined us now, so maybe if we could just, I could get him to answer the question. Doug, they were just wondering about the stipend and the annual indemnity and how with the additional EA director meetings, if that's been accounted for going forward.
Sure. Can everyone hear me? Hello? Can anyone hear me?
Doug, have you thought?
We can't hear you, Doug, unless there's a.
I can hear you, Doug. That's right.
Hang on 1 second, Doug.
That's better, yeah.
How about Doug? Can you hear us now?
I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can now.
Okay, good.
Did you hear my question?
Yeah, I did. And I was listening in before, but I had to have IT or Deanna, I think, took care of arranging it so that I could actually participate. So thank you very much for your patience. Yeah, so we looked at in terms of the upcoming year and what we usually build into the annual indemnity. And I looked at, spoke with Deanna about the number of additional EA director meetings that we anticipated coming out of these changes. And so what I've talked about with Scott is building that increase into the number of meetings that annual remuneration would cover. So the intent would be aside from a CPI increase, that there would be an increase on a pro rata basis to increase the number of meetings that EA directors are being remunerated for, to allow for that increase in the number of EA director meetings.
Thank you, Doug.
Thanks, Doug. Is there any further discussion on this? If not, we could get somebody move the recommendation. All in favor? Opposed? Thank you. I'll turn it over to Jamie on community services update.
Thank you, Chair. So I'm actually only going to speak briefly. I'll shortly be turning it over to Joe Kang and Sherry Madden. There are two services coordinators in the Community Services Department. So, but just to introduce them, we're picking up on Deanna's comments about the changes that we made to the committee structure. What you'll be seeing moving forward is that services that impact all EAs will be brought to this committee. So as a regular, probably annual update, you'll see a presentation like this from Joe and Sherry. And so the intent of this is, even though some of the projects they'll be talking about are specific to different EAs, we think it's important that all the EA directors are sort of aware of the different services and the different projects that we have going in different areas. So yeah, and we'll be happy to take any questions. And we know one of the things that might be rolling around in your heads as you see these is sort of different funding models and taxation for these services. And we can get into the details of that if people have specific questions. But without further ado, I think Joe's going to kick it off here. So take it away.
Yeah, cool. Thanks, Jamie. Good morning, Board of Directors or Electoral Area Directors. My name is Joe Kang. I am a service coordinator and I've been in the role for now about a year and a little bit. So we just wanted to give you guys a little update on some of the capital projects we're going through and just kind of the ongoing things we do as services coordinators over the past season here. So we do ask that we just keep the question until the end of the presentation, and we'll be happy to answer any questions. So one of the big projects I want to talk about in the beginning is the Agate Bay boat launch repairs that were done off of Adams Lake there. So this was a project that was kind of in the works before I even got on with the TNRD. Former Community Services Director Ron Story had kind of kickstarted it and got the process going. So when it comes to actually doing work on any lake, you might as well know there's a lot of licenses and permissions you do need. So right when I hopped onto this job, we began the process of reaching out to the province, reaching out to DFO, reaching out to Flynn Road to get the right permissions to even be able to do this work. So in terms of what actually had happened at the boat launch is made up about 25 boat pads or concrete pads there. And at the bottom of the lake there was 3 pads that had kind of disconnected and either gone to the side or gone off completely. So when people were going in with their boats, they would go in and all of a sudden at the bottom, their boat would just drop off. So thankfully we didn't have any big damage or anything happen to any boats, but that was a big priority for me to get done as soon as possible before the season began. So out on March 22nd, myself, former Community Services Director Ron Story on a volunteer basis, a contractor that lives off of Agate Bay Road there, and an RP Bio were on site lifting up the pads that were dislaunched or not connected anymore, taking them out of the water, putting actual, we put some gravel there and then relayed the pads and connected them. So that project took over 8 to 10 hours that day. It was a long day. We were able to successfully do it though. And as of right now, this boat launch has been holding up pretty good this season. No big complaints. And people are, again, this is one of our busiest assets. I think for the TNRD, there's hundreds and hundreds of people that use this boat launch every day, so, or every weekend. Another big exciting project I actually kind of got to do from phase 1 up was the Electoral Park Enhancement Project happening out in Little Fort. So this project is actually 80% complete now. It's just a couple things left, and this project was done with a contribution of 2 funding sources. So first off was Trans Mountain with their funding to the community. They allocated $170,000 to the community of Little Fort. So we actually used in terms of this project, we used $90,000 of the TM funds, and then Mr. Kershaw put in $150,000 of his Canada Community Building Funds. So a project total of $240,000. So some of the big things that we got done in this project, there wasn't much of a park at the Latrimore Park there. So we removed an old beer garden that was basically inhabitable and no one could use it. It was a liability for kids that were playing around, and it was basically rotting away. So that was removed. So step one. Next step, we actually moved the old fencing of the ball field out to the property line. So, you know, moving forward, if Little Fort were to have any ball tournaments or look to go having anything baseball year round, they are able to. Then we, in partnership with the Little Fort Rec Society, we were able to actually get a brand new sign out in Latrimore Park that says the Little Fort Community Hall and Fire Department. So that sign was well needed. They were using a very old rusted sign that you could barely read. So we got a brand new sign out there. And the big exciting thing that just got finished 2 days ago is a brand new playground for the kids in Little Fort. So that was in total about $100,000 with installation and playground equipment. So I was out there a couple of days ago and it looks awesome, and already we're getting a lot of happy kids out there playing. So, and we also did an addition of a picnic shelter near the playground and a outdoor outhouse. So it is kind of a little park, and people are able to come with their kids and families and have lunch and go on the playground and bathroom facilities. So we are planning a grand opening on October 22nd in Little Fort. We're gonna hopefully have the community come out, have a look at the park, and ask any questions they may have. So in terms of this project, it's 80% complete and should be done within the next 2 weeks. So. My next project that I began right away when I started last year was the Smith Pioneer Park Enhancement Project. This is a park we have out in Lower Nicola. So this project, when I got on, the community consultation and the community input had already been done, and a game plan had already been made of what we're going to be doing in that park. So when I got on, I had a look at the project, and we decided to kind of take a different route and just make things happen faster. So we decided to break the project down into 2 phases. So phase 1 was 2022 this year, and then phase 2 will be next year in 2023. So this project again was 100% funded through the Canada Community Building Fund. And thank you to Mr. Laird and Mr. Graham. They went 50-50 basically on this project because they saw the need for this enhancement project, and you know, both residents of area N and M were using this park. So in phase 1, some of the key items we have gotten or have done and are getting is a new picnic shelter at the park, a covered stage, a band shell. So we did the removal of the old backstops of baseball backstops, new fall surfacing, as you can see in the photo down below. That fall surfacing needs to be replaced every couple of years, just with standards, and it had been over a decade. So I got that done as soon as possible. And lastly, there was an existing tennis court there, and we added some pickleball lines because pickleball is picking up momentum. People love it. So I thought, you know what, let's use the existing tennis court and just add those lines. So, and people are using it every day. So, and just quickly, phase 2 next year, we're planning on getting a half-court basketball court for kids, the perimeter path around the park redone, some outdoor senior fitness equipment, and a nice, exciting zip line that kids can use from one end to the other. So it's super cool. Actually, I was just talking to the manufacturer yesterday, and it's pretty exciting. But again, the total for this project was around $660,000. We have board approval for the first half of 330, and we will be coming to the board again next year for the second part. And one thing I'd like to note, just due to supply chain and all that stuff, a lot of things were pushed back with when our actual picnic shelters and the band shell. It was frankly impossible for contractors to even get the material and labor. And I think that's been seen throughout every industry nowadays. So, but things are looking up. So we're hoping to get things kicking in, at least the picnic shelter up here in October. So I'm just gonna pass it over to Sherry for some of her capital projects.
Hi there. First off, I'm going to offer an apology because I can see that this isn't our last version of this. We're back to Agate Bay boat launch photos. So my apologies for the fact that we don't have current photos. So I'll just speak to what's on the slide. So I'm Sherry Madden. I've been the services coordinator for 14 and a half years for the North Thompson Valley areas A and B, and was so happy when Joe was hired last year to help out in the other areas because it's a really awesome position to be in. So in the Blue River area, we have some improvements that are required to the Blue River Community Park jetty. The face of it broke off, and while it's still publicly safe, it's something we need to improve. So we had that project put out this year. It's taken us about 4 years to come to fruition, thanks to approvals that are required, as Joe referred to, from the province. And then also because we had trouble securing a contractor. So at this point, we still have not secured a contractor because when this was put out to quote earlier this year, it came in about 5 times our allocated budget. So one of the pressures we're really seeing up in the North Thompson Valley, and the directors will be aware of it, is lack of availability of local contractors to undertake this work. So we're having to play a lot of mobilization costs are built into these bids. And then, as Joe referred to, supply chain issues are a big part of the problem. So contractors need to make sure they're going to make money, so they're bidding accordingly. And so this project actually, we're hoping to take it back out to quote again this fall once we receive an approval from the province to do the work in the spring. And then this project will be completed in the spring. You're going to see the same photos again and again. My apologies. So the Blue River Pedestrian Bridge has been a project which got started in 2018. It's a pedestrian suspension bridge over the Blue River. And through funding from Trans Mountain, Mike Wigley Heli Skiing, and Canada Community Building Funds, as well as taxation, this project is moving forward at this time. On October the 8th, they'll pour the second concrete pier. We had secured a contractor for a wonderful price. Unfortunately, he was in a horrific life-altering accident back in 2019. He did his best. We gave him a bit of time to try and work his way through some issues. But by 2021, he indicated to us that he was unable to complete the contract under the terms because he's a one-man show. And as soon as he had to move to incorporating other people, it just wasn't going to be able to be done. So we've since secured another contractor. Again, the project came in over budget, but it was interesting. The pressures we're seeing on our budgets right now, the 2 bids that we did receive, the 2 quotes, were $600,000 apart. So one person was just bidding, hoping they got the work, and one person actually bid to do the work, is the way I kind of look at it. So the contractor completing this is actually out of Valemount, Robson Design Build. Super happy with the work that they're doing to date so far. And we'll be looking forward to at some point having a grand opening for this. Its anticipated completion is prior to the end of November. It'll all depend on, again, some supply chain issues that they're having to deal with. And then whether or not we'll actually physically do a grand opening this winter versus next spring will be dependent on the snow levels in Blue River, because where the bridge is located, it supports in the summer hiking and biking trails, and there's actually road access right down to the river as well. But in the winter, that trail system is only maintained for cross-country skiing and snowshoeing. So if we're already seeing snow in the area, we will not hold the grand opening this fall. We'll wait till spring when it's snow-free. I was hoping to show you guys the Blue River Trails map brochure. Thank you very much for the approvals of the board last year for the Blue River Trails Master Plan. This Trails Map brochure project was part of that to start actually advocating and advertising the trail systems. And so we've managed to get that done this year. It's also available on the blueriverbc.ca website as a geo-referenced PDF document. So you don't necessarily need to have the brochure in your hand. You can actually download that map into your phone into a program like Avenza. And then when you're actually out on the trail system, you're a blue dot on the map and it shows you exactly where you are. We're doing the Welcome to Blue River and Avola Trails signage. So similar to what the board is indicating for Welcome to the TNRD, we're doing some similar signage in the Blue River and Avola area. These signs already exist for Wellsgate Country and did prior to my position even being in place. So if you've been up the valley, you will have seen the Welcome to Wellsgate Country signs. So we'll be working on Blue River and Avola signage. which of course requires all kinds of permissions from the province to work in the right of way. And then once we have that, we'll work on to securing a contractor. We've already completed the design, and I apologize that I can't show that to you today. The Vavenby outdoor rink replacement in Director Schaefer's area is well underway. The existing rink boards have all been removed. The concrete slab has been scarified. They were out cleaning and prepping for a new pour. They're going to do a 2-inch lift. Then they're rebuilding the entire structure from the concrete up. This time when we're building, we're using pressure treated materials. We'll be painting the entire structure. It's got steel supports, and we'll be using UV stabilized puck board, which will allow, and thicker, which will allow for longer capacity of the board. We've typically been having to replace at least 5 sheets per year due to damage. So we're moving to a more robust material. The last one had about a 15-year lifespan, and this one we're projecting hopefully closer to 25 to 30 years. This project's total budget, including all of the approvals, engineering, and all the other materials came in. We've allocated 195,000. We're hoping it's all being awarded. And we're hoping that we will come in lower than that when the project is completed. We'll just move from our capital projects that we either have underway or planned for next year into general operations of what Joe and I do within our jobs. So we work with the Avola, Blue River, and Little Fort cemeteries. And we're currently having, with the aid of Casey, the NDIT intern, a review of the bylaws for the cemeteries to bring them up to the current requirements of the province, for one thing, and also just of the local residents, because we are starting to see more requests for things like green burials. We're seeing more utilization of cremated remains versus full body. And yet we still have a 9x9 plot that is taken up for example, 1 cremated remain. So we'd like to see a better allocation of the space within there, as well as an update of our fees, because currently taxation is actually supporting the majority of the costs associated, and we're not even recouping the costs for a burial. In Director Quinn's area with the Blue River Cemetery, a number of years ago, we actually did a community consultation and came up with an expansion plan for that cemetery, because currently only about 1/3 of the actual property is developed into the cemetery. So we'll be looking forward to moving that project forward over the next couple of years once we have some funding secured for that. The community halls that we look after within the community services program are the Avola Schoolhouse, the Little Fort Community Hall, and the Vavenby Community Hall. So there's a combined way of those happening. The Avola, Joe and I look after the maintenance and operations primarily, but rentals, for example, for the Little Fort Community Hall are handled by the Little Fort Rec Society, whereas at the Avola Schoolhouse and the Vavenby Community Hall, those are handled by community services staff. We have a large number of community parks located within our various electoral areas. And some of the projects that you saw underneath of capital are located in some of this listing of parks. The photo that's showing here is the Ferry Road Park, which was developed into a full park between 2018 and 2019. And a grand opening was held for that. It's been super well received within the community. It's adjacent to the North Thompson River. There's a picnic shelter, a fenced playground because of the adjacency to the river, a bit of a walking path, some benches, some picnic tables. There's a picnic shelter. And there's a dock. So it's a heavily used park, and it's not just by the members who live in the Blackpool area near Ferry Road. People come from far and wide to use this, especially that boat launch, because access to the North Thompson River is actually quite limited up our valley. I'm going to skip that one because we took it out. And regional parks, I'll hand back over to Joe.
Cool. Thanks, Sherry. Yeah, so just a brief description of our regional parks. So regional parks, the whole district pays into them. So we have the Barrier Forks Regional Park, the Little Hells Gate, and the South Thompson Buoy System. So with the Barrier Forks Regional Park, that's located in Area O, we work with the North Thompson Rec Society. We kind of have an agreement put in with them, and they'll actually maintain the cross-country skiing pass and the warming hut there. So we actually did complete a gas tax project earlier this year as well, with the help of Carmen Smith out in Barrier there, with doing improvements to the warming hut. We got a brand new staircase. indoor got a new stain, I believe. So that was awesome. That's all completed. And then the Little Hell's Gate, I guess it'd be nice if we had the picture here. We just wanted to kind of show, we have a platform we put in for viewing for public. So kind of sucks we don't have the picture. And the South Thompson buoy system, I look after the South Thompson buoy system. It's the system that runs right across the South Thompson. So again, this year with supply chain issues, we have a contractor that looks after the system once a year once a week during the heavy season in the summer. And we did have many buoys out of place or completely gone. And I actually put the order in back in January. So we could have the buoys in the water by the season starts. And unfortunately, we just got the buoys literally 3 weeks ago. So there was some concerns from the public, and I reached out to them and explained, it was kind of a thing that was out of our hands. But as far as our contractor, he's awesome. He goes out once a week, maintains all the buoys, and reports back to me and make sure boaters are safe out there on the South Thompson. Quickly about street lighting. Street lighting, we have several, about actually 144 street lights. Oh, sorry. Did you have a? Oh, sorry. Yeah, sorry. So street lighting, we just have we have about 144 street lights in some of our communities throughout the TNRD. We also have a critical street lighting taxation process that we have, which areas B and E don't actually pay into, but the rest of the EAs do. So just an example, over in area M, we had a resident requesting a street light on the corner of Monk Park and Highway 5A. There was a mailbox, and just to a safety concerns, and I guess there was people that were hanging out at night. We actually went out with BC Hydro and installed 2 new street lights on there. So any requests that we have moving forward from the public in the areas that have the critical street lighting, we are hoping to actually budget and work with the directors and public and getting new critical street lighting put in wherever requested.
Director, hey, one moment, Director Elliott, you had something? We'll wait till it's complete then. Thank you.
And again, street lighting, it's an ongoing thing. We actually don't own the street lights. We basically pay for them through taxation, and it's a BC Hydro asset. So that's what I have on BC street lighting. And other duties, I'll just let Sherry touch on. I guess the only other duty I really have on that list is EOC support. Actually, my first day when I began with the TNRD, literally walked up the stairs, and Ron Story just pointed right over to the EOC when during last year's wildfires. So again, I love working in the EOC. I wish it doesn't happen, but it's an environment that I really enjoy. And over the last year, I've been able to be in 3 active EOCs with fires, flooding, the Frechette, and learn lots through Jamie, Kevin Skrepnik, and I'm pretty confident, and I'm sometimes on deck with operations chief or logistics chief. So again, it's nice to be able to step in and help when all hands are deck. So, and the other 2, I'll let Sherry just explain.
Yeah, so as with Joe, last year got called into the EOC to undertake support, which was wonderful. And thankfully, from my perspective, it was slow enough this year that I didn't get called in because it could be handled within the staffing here in the office. So that was really good. I know they were busy here, but it didn't extend to the seriousness of the 2021 season. In Area B, in the Avola and Blue River areas, we still do undertake radio rebroadcasting. So we work to keep that operational, and we're working on ensuring that we are delivering that in the most cost-effective mechanisms, and do a continual review of that. We're very fortunate because the entire support for that is provided through the Jim Pattison Group and Radio NL for free. So we've managed to get to that form of agreement. The only thing at this point in time that we are required to handle is the ExploreNet satellite costs. And we're looking at ways to actually do away with that and maybe bring it a bit more in-house, for example, on the Blue River Library with the new TELUS fiber lines that have been dropped in there. So we'll be working on that. Tourism marketing is not something that we typically do within the regional district specifically. Typically funding is allocated, for example, for the Lower North Thompson Tourism Society in the Barrier and Area O area, or to the Gold Country group. But with the Blue River area, there is no established group like those societies. So that is and has been part of my job, is to handle the Blue River tourism marketing. So that's where the trails brochure, for example, comes in. That's where the welcome to Ebola Blue River signage comes in. We contract to a local marketing company to handle the social media because it can just get out of hand and be something that I can't control. I will respond to things, but they do the majority of our posting. But we undertook a photography session this year, which was wonderful and involved some TNRD staff because we had difficulties finding local people. But overall, those are the things that we do.
Yeah, any questions for three? Okay.
Okay, we'll start off with Director Elliott.
Thanks, that was a good presentation, even a lack of pictures. However, I have a question about your community parks. You left one out. Savinaw's Community Park, which is the boat launch and the foreshore leases, are a Area J park, community park funded by Area J. Okay, so that's one thing that I noticed. And the other thing was the buoys. The buoys end up down at Steelhead
Yeah.
every spring.
Nope.
That's where they are. And they are within not just the South Thompson, but the whole of Kamloops Lake. And I don't know whether you have a map of that. They should be showing that, I would have thought. Because I believe it is also, is it not under the park function, Jamie? The buoys,
The buoys are under
a
the park.
regional park.
They're under the regional parks function, yeah.
Okay.
And the ones that end up at Steelhead, meaning if they break off, that's where they wash up.
Right.
Was that what you
So
meant?
I have a question about the regional parks. At one time, there was a considerable amount of money in that fund. Did we use it for, have we used it? I guess is the question.
Yeah, I don't know if Doug has those numbers at the fingertips, but yes, there still is. I know there still is money in the reserve there. And actually the regional parks function is something that we want to bring to the board probably at the next EA directors meeting in 2023, just to do a little bit more strategic planning. The regional parks function, as I understand it, hasn't been revisited in many, many years. So what we would like is to get board direction on an actual definition of what type of parks do we want to consider regional and the funding model for that versus electoral area specific. And that clarification we as staff need to get from the board. So you're kind of ahead of me, but it's a very good point. But I can use the river buoys as an example. And I think the intent of that being established at a regional park way back when was that it was a benefit to the entire region of having a navigation system from Kamloops Lake to Chase. And that was a regional benefit versus an individual playground in a small community is seen as more of a direct benefit to that community. So that difference needs to be clarified, and that's what we'd like to bring to this committee. And then
Well, I know, yeah, I know that money has been sitting there for as long as I can remember, probably 15 years, doing nothing. And it's time you used it and got it into the community. And that particular issue is long in coming. And so I'm glad you're going to do that. And I have one more question, Joe, about the Little Fort Park. There has some little round green guys in the wagon wheels. And the wagon wheels, what are they? Okay, see those round green things?
So yeah, to the chair, yeah. So those, so that's just a basic concept drawing. So those round things are actually landscaping trees and stuff like that we're planning on putting in. So they're not essentially anything.
Oh, they're not there yet.
No, not yet. So.
Okay, what about the wagon wheels? Are they significant in some way?
Those are exactly existing trees. So that were plotted from so we actually use a third party that we give them the information of what we're wanting in the park, and they'll come out with a plan for us and do up a sketch like this. So yeah, it can be confusing. I guess if we had a key with the pictures and what they meant, it would have been nice. But yeah, those are existing trees or trees that we're planning on putting in. So
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Director Gillis. Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. One quick question for Mr. Kang or Ms. Madden. I'm wondering about the usage. I mean, I'm delighted to see what you're doing with the parks and so on. Have you got any idea of how much use these are being put to? Are we, because I have seen over the years wonderful improvements in places sitting idle. So is there any great uptake in the use?
And through the chair to Mr. Gillis, we actually, when I first got on, that was one of the things I kind of asked was, did we have any statistics on usage or how our parks are doing? So I noticed moving forward with the Agate Bay boat launch, our contractor goes out 3 times a week, and we are kind of guesstimating with the use of the boat launch with the garbage and recycling and stuff like that. But in terms of an actual number of how numbers are looking for people using the parks, I don't have an exact number. I don't know if Sherry has a number for her area, but it would be nice to have a statistics that we could bring every year and say, volume of public use is going up or down, and that can determine capital projects moving forward and stuff in those parks. So
I certainly wasn't looking for a statistic. I was just hoping that you might have some idea whether they're, being used. Being used heavily or being used lightly or
again,
not being used at all, which is what I've seen in some cases.
Yeah, and some with our bigger communities like Smith Pioneer, Little Ford, the boat launch, like every time I go out there, there's someone there or someone's doing something. So just talking to our contractors, they are being well used. The facilities are all being well used. So I don't think there's any big problem with not usage of any parks that we have right now. So
thank you, Mr. Vieira.
Jamie.
Yeah, just to add to that, I wanted to clarify that the development of these parks is always a community-led initiative. So using the Smith Pioneer one, for an example, that was brought forward by the area directors, and then we held public meetings around what they wanted to see in the park, the improvements they wanted. So really the desire and the design comes from the community, and then Sherry and Joe are implementing the kind of the desires of the community.
Yeah, I'd like to add to Chair Gillis also was in Little Fort, all the playground was outdated, so we had the option and took it to the community. It was either going to be removed and totally taken away or go as a community plan. And I think there's been great support up in Little Fort for that. It was either lose it or fix it up.
Good. I have only one more question, and I'm not sure to whom I should direct it, but I expect it might be to Ms. Campbell. And that's with respect to your River Boy program. If I recall, until recently, those River Boys were tended by a volunteer organization. Is that not correct? No?
I know. So that River Boy program is contracted, and
okay,
we do pay someone to.
Okay, so maybe it was a contractor I was speaking to as opposed to a volunteer. But what troubles me about your comment, I grumbled about how many times I had heard the word liability when I came to this organization, and I hate to raise it myself, but when we fail to, through our fault or not, when we fail to place those River Boys as a result of lack of supply or whatever, are we under some obligation to notify the public that we've been unable to mark the hazards in the river as we should have done? Or where do we stand on that? Are we possibly liable if we don't do it, or at least let the public know that we haven't done it or something?
Yeah, the short answer is yes, and we did notify them when the water level was coming down and we are having these issues. It was one of these unfortunate situation where it kept getting dragged out, where we were expecting to have them in place before the water levels came down. It was going to be a risk, and we were expecting to get it the following week and it didn't happen. And then we did notify the public through media release and social media. Yeah.
Thanks for that. I would just add that on one occasion coming down the South Thompson River, and I'm sure it wasn't an error in navigation, but for some reason or other, I seem to run out of water, and a kind, very kind person who was on board with me gave me a dashboard sticker that said, when your water exceeds, or when your draft exceeds the water's depth, you are most assuredly aground.
Thank you. Director Quinn.
Thank you. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Thank you. Just for historical, on Little Hell's Gate began in the early 90s. And it was driven by Area B, and it was funded by Area B up until the time that Director Rothenberger convinced the board that the buoys would be good for a regional park function. And then the funding for Hell's Gate shifted over to the regional parks function at that time. I don't have any statistics on how many people use it, but we do a regular garbage pickup. And I have no idea how much garbage comes out of there. So it might be for early next year, it might be an idea just to get a traffic counter, then you'll get a really good example of how much it's used. That's just for historical more than anything else. I don't know if Sherry wants to comment on it or not.
Through the chair to
Sherry,
Director
go
Quinn.
ahead.
Yeah, so we definitely are seeing increased usage with the Little Hell's Gate Regional Park. I'm seeing more emails with regards to the condition of the road, because it's an old forestry road that is now West Fraser has divested themselves of it. So we'll be having to figure out a way to maintain that road. With the increase in tourism returning to the area as well, we're seeing an increase in all of our usage of these kinds of facilities. And one of the things that we recently did was put up regional park signs on the highway, which actually directed people into, for example, Little Hell's Gate. Through the province, the only park signage they have available to us will always label them regional parks. So for example, if you're in the Blackpool area or the Evola area right now, you will see there's signage on the highway directing people to the boat launch, for example, at Ferry Road, or down to the little day park that's in Evola, which will say regional park. So that's just their nomenclature. That's not how we're funding them. But I think that the suggestions on mechanisms for utilization would be great, especially for Little Hell's Gate, to justify the expense to maintain that park. And with regards to usage after improvements, Director Schaefer has the committee, the Wells Grey Country Services Committee, which has representatives on it from the areas we've done park improvements in Area A. Director Quinn previously had Thompson Headwaters, and they would all provide anecdotal information on the level of usage which they saw in those parks, which capital funding had been allocated to, and every park has seen an improvement. And it's interesting that you should raise the question about, are we doing parks and are they being used? Because at the recent Wells Grey Country Services Committee meeting, one of the committee members actually brought up that there are 2 parks in Vavenby. Why do we have 2 parks? Because the other one never looks like it's used. So thank you for that question, Director Gillis.
Thank you, Sherry. Director Schaefer.
I'd just like to say that the Ferry Road Park that we have in there was the best money we ever spent. And it does get used. I know when we had the open house there, we had over 100 people there for it, and it's a great place. I think it's a beautiful park. Vavenby Park, what I notice more, I mean, we use it, but what I notice more is people coming off the highway and having picnics there and letting their kids do things. And so it gets a great use as well. So I think it's worth the parks that we put in.
Thank you. Director Rice.
Thank you, Chair. Was that Rice? I think it was Rice. Okay, anyways. Hey, well, first of all, I'd like to say, you know, even though the structure, Deanna pointed out, not much has changed. I think a lot has changed, actually. Just this today, getting to hear from our Joe and Sherry and having 6 meetings instead of 2, I think it's a significant step forward for electoral area directors to have this new format, and I applaud the direction we're going with this. So just thank you for that. And on a second note, as Jamie pointed out, you know, the electoral areas bring things forward, but then we sort of hand off, you stay out of operations kind of thing and let the community move it forward and stuff like that. So Joe, real quick, have you heard from the 16-mile people yet?
I have,
Chair
to Director Rice. As you are aware, we had a couple of community meetings with 70-mile improvement district. And so again, with when we have put a park in, unfortunately, it's just, if it's not our asset, we can't really do the work directly, but, I guess just how Mr. Rice said, we can go out there and actually consult different improvement districts and show them how we do things. So just as in area I there, I've had multiple meetings with 70 Mile Improvement District for parks, and I will actually, 16 Mile, sorry, 16 Mile. And I will actually go out there and, go through a step-by-step process of how we put our parks in, and if they need contacts or suppliers or anything, we're open to, again, just anything for the betterment of the community, so.
Follow up.
go
And
ahead.
on that note, I went out there with Joe, and I'll tell you what, it does a long ways to bring in the TNRD sort of into the limelight, that we're out there to try to help, even if it's not an owned property. That meeting went very well, and made a really nice contact. And to do that, I think helps not only the public image, but it also helps that group know that something's moving forward. And as us directors do try to stay out of operations, sometimes it's tough, but having you on the team is really wonderful. Thanks.
Thank you, Director Rothenberger.
Thanks, Chair. Just a couple of notes and a couple of questions. One of the benefits of having old farts on the board is that they can remember what happened 20 years ago. At least on a good day, they can. It was about then that the federal government was responsible for the river buoys, just to clarify that they wanted out of it for financial reasons, as I recall. So we had quite a battle with the MP at the time and the feds over it. We ended up saying, well, somebody's got to do it. And so TNRD jumped in and took it over, which the TNRD is a want to do when nobody else wants to do something. That's part of what we do with the TNRD. But it's always been a contractor. We hired a contractor to do that. Yes, indeed. And also just a note on the Lower North Thompson Tourism Society. It's not just Area O, Area P has also been involved for at least the last 8 years. With respect to streetlights, a couple of questions. So the process, resident, and we've got two communities in Area P, Whitecroft and Pritchard North, that have streetlight service, and their residents are very diligent about noting when a streetlight burns out, but they aren't always aware of the process, and I wasn't either until it started happening. And they approach either the electoral area director or the TNRD directly, which says, yeah, but you got to talk to Hydro. This is a bit of a process to go through, and so it can take quite a while to get a streetlight replaced. I just wondered if you have any thoughts on how to make that process a little more efficient and quicker, so that people aren't living with darkened streets.
Through the
Sherry?
chair to Director Rothenberger. So the process as it stands right now is if anybody within one of those service areas notices that one of the streetlights are out, they can call the main office here. They'll get the information and they'll pass it along to community services. We'll actually get a hold of the individual if they have not provided enough relevant information. For example, a pole ID number from the brass tag that's on that pole. Once we have that information, those of us in community services can actually go into what's called the Streetlight Information Management System. And we can actually put in that repair request. And typically their turnaround time on the repair request has been coming down to about 10 days. So any of you who have street lighting services within your area, that information can get out there. If they phone and report it to the TNRD, if they've given enough information, awesome. If they haven't, then we'll call them back and get that information and get that put into the system right away.
Yeah, I know that they do need to provide some specifics as to where it is so that Hydro can find the pole easily. And in some cases, even been the nearest street address.
Yes.
But I believe that sometimes they're told not really us, just talk to Hydro. So maybe there's an informational thing that can be done there, maybe even in the newsletter, to let people know the process for reporting it and what they have to provide in the way of information. Just a thought on that one. My other question on streetlights was with respect to what we're using for streetlights, and the brightness of them, because in a situation in, Pinantan, there was a safety issue with the community mailboxes there. And there was a request from the community to get us streetlights. On the other hand, there was a concern, pretty big concern expressed by the nearby residents who happen to live across the street. And depending on what type of streetlight is used and the technology that's used, those things can be just horrendously bright. So I wonder if you have any comments on the current standard for streetlights in our communities, and how that concern might be addressed, because it is a concern everywhere, not just in DNRD. I know that.
Through the chair to Director Rothenberger. So recently BC Hydro has undergone an entire review of all the streetlights that they have within the province of BC. And they're replacing all the high pressure sodium. So those ones that have like the big bulbs on the bottom of them and they radiate out everywhere, with LED lights. And so part of what the regional district had to do was they sent us a list of those 144 lights, which Joe referred to earlier. And we had to identify what kind of a light we wanted to replace that high pressure sodium light. So appreciating the fact that it does have a potential negative impact on residents regarding light pollution, regarding circadian rhythms, regarding animals, and a number of other issues, we actually chose like the warmer light that's not as bright for residential street type areas. And for critical intersections and stuff like that, we've chosen the cooler light, they call it, which is that more bright light. And it's interesting because I actually have a street light right outside of my house. And I never even noticed when they changed it over from the high pressure sodium to the LED. But the one thing that I can tell you is the light itself is brighter, but the direction that the light is flowing now is more direct. So when it's around something like a mailbox for safety, it's actually a much more direct light. So with regards to the installations, we definitely take a look at that kind of an aspect. So something like a mailbox, it just needs light. It doesn't need specific light because there's multiple vehicles coming different directions at an intersection. So that would be something where we would probably recommend to Hydro that it would be like the warmer light, lower wattage. So it's providing illumination for safety, but it doesn't need to be that bright white. So you're seeing everything for a much broader spectrum. So they've actually changed their type of street light, which is benefiting that as well.
That sounds good. So in a case like Pinantan, knowing the concerns of residents, Hydro could go take a look at it and make recommendations as to what type of lighting and so on would be installed and without interfering with the neighbors.
Through the chair. It's actually the regional district which would determine which light was put there. And then we put that proposal forth with a pole ID number if there's an existing pole. And we ask them for a quote for installation. And then once that quote is received, and I'm not sure the approval process for the critical streetlights at this point in time. So if I may pass that to Jamie.
Yeah, I was just going to add that, you know, operationally, we're obviously going to have to weigh the decision as well when we're talking about critical street lighting and main intersections that are there for safety reasons, primarily versus, you know, a continuous street lighting on a you know, a side residential street, in terms of brightness and whatnot. So as I appreciate concerns of nearby residents, but also there's the concerns of everyone else using that intersection and the benefit of having that more brighter light that we're going to have to balance. But yes, to echo Sherry's point, we're ultimately going to give the direction to Hydro in terms of replacing that. Hydro has told us sort of as a background that they're replacing all the lights. And then that's what Sherry referred to, is that they came back to us and gave us the option of which lights to replace them with. So I don't know the specifics in Pinantan if that's already been replaced or if that's pending replacement.
It was not replaced because of the neighborhood concerns. I mean, that they didn't exist. I don't believe at that particular location, and the request had been, we need streetlights there for safety purposes, but that had to be balanced off against the as it was said, light pollution that might result. Yeah, so that interesting point. We might discuss that further.
Thank you. Director Watson and Schaefer, then Laird. Dr. Watson?
Yes, thank you. Just a side note, I don't think 16 Mile is an improvement district.
Yes, sorry. through the chair to Director Watson, I apologize for that. It is not an improvement district. I was thinking about the Spence's Bridge Improvement District that we're also doing the consultation with right now. So with 16 Mile, it was a community group as well. So I do apologize.
Director Shaver.
I would just like to thank both of you for the work you do, but I'd also like to thank Sherry because I deal with Sherry all the time. And she does a fantastic job. We wouldn't be where we were without her. And she keeps us in line. Cool.
Director Latter.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This just ask Jamie about the Smith Pioneer Park. We were having discussions with Doug Ray in the spring about how the taxation was going to work. Do you know if that's in process for next year's budget?
Yeah, the plan moving forward with that area is to shift the operational cost to the electoral area parks service.
Yeah, that's just, yeah, so it's in the process now
Yes,
for the next
yeah,
year's
yeah.
budget.
So for next year, that it'll be fully funded through that mechanism.
Thank you. Thanks.
Is there any further discussion? As the outgoing director of Area O, I would just like to thank Joe, Sherry, and everybody for the work that's been done in Little Fort and at my boat launch. And I'll tell you that boat launch has just brought on other issues. Now you go out there, Joe, and find a place to park all the cars, while they're leaving their boats there, because it's blocking the roads, it's everything. So one success brings another job. So thank you very much on behalf of Area O. Thank you. Anything else for Sherry or Joe? Director Quinn.
Thank you, Sherry, for the work you've done for us. Eventually, the bridge will get built.
If nothing else, thank you very much to both of you. Thank you. Now we'll turn it over to Deanna.
Thank you, Chair Kershaw. I'm actually going to turn it over to Ms. Satt in a moment, but we just felt this was timely to provide an elections update as we're well into the election season. We're actually 3 weeks away from general voting day. So we've put out the official declaration of elections and acclamations this week on Tuesday. So we've had 4 acclamations, which leaves us with 6 elections in our electoral areas. And we just posted the notice of election yesterday, and it's also published in all the papers within our communities in the TNRD. And so that's a statutory requirement. And the notice identifies who is eligible to vote, the various ways to vote, when you can vote, and how you can vote. So before I turn it over to Ms. Satt, I just wanted to recognize her and the work that went into planning all of these polling locations and the scheduling. As you can see, there's a number of locations and it was a lot of work, and we ran into some challenges. There's some venues that we might have used in the past where there was construction, so we couldn't use them again this year, or they weren't available for some reason. And we've just been, we've had a bit of a hard time getting election officials. So we hope we have enough. But it's been a bit of a challenge. So, but I think we've got some good coverage in all of our areas, and we will have a training session for all of our elected officials 2 weeks from now.
Thank you. Good morning. Olivia, if we can just move it down so that we can show the general voting day first, and then we'll scroll up a little bit. So on general voting day, we're going to have 12-hour polls at 20 physical locations. 3 of these locations will serve both electoral areas L and P. So we will actually have 23 12-hour polls. In addition, for the first time, as far as I can recall, and I've been here a while, there will be a poll at the TNRD Civic Building, which will serve all electoral areas and will be open to accept any mail ballots that are dropped off that day. Also on general voting day, we will have 11 pop-up polls. These will be a minimum of 2.5 hours each, and will be provided by 4 roving teams. If you can scroll down a little bit or up a little bit, Olivia, for the advanced voting. Thank you. For advanced voting, we will have a 12-hour poll on Wednesday, October the 5th and Wednesday, October the 12th here at the TNRD office. And following the 2018 successful pilot of our bookmobile partnership,
We will also be offering advanced mobile voting opportunities on October the 6th, which will be 2 locations in Electoral I. October the 7th will be 4 locations in Electoral Area E. And on October the 14th, we will offer 3 locations in Electoral Area A. New this year, as a result of changes in legislation, is mail ballot voting. This will be open to all eligible voters within the regional district. We already have 50 requests for mail ballots. And within the next couple of days, you may notice some TNRD vote by mail pop-ups that'll show up on your phone. The last time we used this type of advertising, we got 55,000 views. So we really hope that this is really going to promote our mail ballot voting option. A goal for legislative services was to provide as many viable voting opportunities as possible and to make it as convenient as possible for our electors to vote. Deanna Campbell and the Leg Services team and Colton Davies in our communications department, we put in a considerable amount of time and effort to offer these opportunities. And just on a final note, NATO in our GIS department is working on an app where a resident will be able to look up their address, and what will pop up will be the voting locations for everything within their electoral area. That's it. Thank you.
Director Rice.
Thanks, Chair. Just one quick question. One concern I have is for Area I is Shaken Band, which is on Highway 8. And it's a pretty big trip for them to go anywhere to vote because of the highway closure. And I'm just wondering if we're keeping an eye on that a little bit. And if there's, I know Arnie Lampro, the chief there, would probably be concerned too. So I wonder if there's any thoughts. I have had word from MOTI, Sean, the lead on that they are going to get the highway open, but not before the election.
Okay, through the chair to Director Rice, we have a few communities like that. We have communities in really rural areas where we can't provide a voting opportunity to each community. But what we do have is that mail ballot option. Anybody can vote by mail. They can go on our webpage and fill out the application, or if there are concerns regarding broadband and having access to that, they can phone us and we can assist them with that.
Okay.
Director Watson.
Thank you. I think this could work out really good for the bookmobile because you may actually get more people out to a bookmobile out of this. Just a thought.
Director Elliott.
Thank you. Maybe. Agnes, how come we have starting in Cherry Creek at 12:30 voting?
That's part of the roving, the pop-up option. We couldn't justify putting a full-time poll there, so we will have a roving team. We've never had a full-time poll in Cherry Creek.
Yes, we have. For many areas, we have. For
Okay,
sure.
then you know what, you know what, it was when they were working out of residences. That's right. You're absolutely
We
right.
have had up until in 2018, and that annoys me because we have just as many people in Cherry Creek as we do in Tobiano.
Yeah,
So now what you're saying is Cherry Creek voters have to go someplace else if they can't add up with that pop-up. That really is just not fair to the voters.
yeah, so part of the reason where we were deciding on where to have these locations was to take a look at past numbers. So I can get you the past numbers for Cherry Creek if you'd like. Tobiano is just down the road and we do have the mobile voting option. And I know they're two totally different communities. I understand that. And we did go through that. I know that the number of properties is very, very similar, but we did make these decisions based on past numbers.
Any further, Director Quinn?
There. Now it works. Through the chair to Agnes. What are the qualifications for people can vote? Are non-residents who own property in our electoral areas allowed to vote?
Yes, they are.
And the most practical way to do it is by mail?
You can do it by mail ballot, or you can go to the polling location if there's one near you during that day, but you can definitely do it through mail ballot.
Okay, thank you.
Director Schaefer?
Is there a end date for mail-in ballots that you can apply for?
So we've got October the 3rd established as that date, but that doesn't prevent people from voting and requesting a mail ballot. They can come and pick it up at the office. They have until October the 15th to get it to us, to get it to the chief election officer. So they could actually physically deliver it if they choose, or send it in by courier as well.
So they can go, and can they pick it up anytime before the 15th as well? Or is
Yes.
it just,
Yeah, just let us know in advance that you'd like a mail ballot and we'll have it ready for you.
thank you.
Yeah, go ahead. Really.
For electoral area E, there is an advance poll in Clinton on October 5th. And I don't know if you want to include electoral area E in that as well.
Okay, so what we did in deciding where we were going to have these advanced polls was we took a look at past numbers. So in 2018, we actually had 6 12-hour advanced polls in rural communities, and we got a total of 54 voters. So by contrast, in 2018, for the same electoral areas, we had 190 voters at the pop-up locations, and we had 110 voters at that mobile bookmobile poll. So the decision was made that, you know what, I don't know if it's really viable to have those advanced polls in those locations to run 12 hours worth of polls. We do have the mail ballot option.
Director Rice.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair. To Agnes. On the mail-in ballots, if you're a non-resident property owner, and you want a ballot, can you just like call the office and get one sent? Because a lot of the non-residents owners certainly can't come to the office.
Yeah.
Okay.
Director Elliott.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, I'd like the record to show that I am quite disappointed in the Cherry Creek voting procedures, and I'm not blaming Agnes, okay? But in 2018, there was a residence that was supposed to be the voting station until somebody that was running in that election protested where that vote was taking place. And the electoral officer at the time pulled that station and put the pop-up station there. And that's why it showed that there was so few people voted in Cherry Creek, and that's what happened because of a conflict with the person who was actually running. And so from my standpoint, when I look at Area J, like the Trunk Hill Valley has a couple of hours, they've only got a few people, but Tobiano, which is a full 12 hours, has got the same amount of people as Cherry Creek. So I know you can't fix it now, but would you please try and fix it for the next general election?
If I may,
Go ahead.
what we'll do, and you know what, it's a guess sometimes. You take an educated
Oh,
guess,
I
you look at past numbers. We'll take a look at the results, and anything that we find that we can make improvements on next time, we will record them for the next election.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm not belittling the point. I just wanted to understand that Cherry Creek is getting to be a big community, and everybody has said, how come we can't have a full polling station? And we've been going over this for a while. So anyway, my protest.
Thank you, Director Elliott. Okay, Director Schaefer.
In addition to this, the advanced polling that we're having throughout Area A, is there going to be advanced polling in Clearwater on the 5th?
No,
So there's no going to be, this is all that's going to be in Area A.
that's correct.
Okay. Well, what about people in other areas of the area? Okay, we've got Vavenby and Birch Island, but there's Blackpool, East Blackpool, and Upper Clear.
Yes, we have 12-hour polls in Blackpool and Vavenby.
Yeah.
So
on
we
the
do have
polling
that.
day.
Yeah, we've got the pop-up polls in East Blackpool and Upper Clearwater. And Birch Island was the other community, and we will have the mobile poll with the bookmobile.
So if they
there.
want to do any advance, they have to come into here.
They have to come into here, they can do the
Or
first
mail-in.
ballot or the mail-in ballot, yes.
No other questions? Go ahead, Agnes.
That's it for me, thank you.
Denise? Deanna, I mean,
Thank you, Chair Kershaw. I just wanted to explain the mail ballot process because we're hoping that candidates and EA directors can let their residents know how to vote. So because of timing, we of course want to ensure that we get the mail ballots mailed back in time. So as Ms. Satt mentioned, we've sort of put a cutoff for applications, which is you need to apply to vote by mail first. And so we've made that fairly accessible. You can fill it out, come into our office, you can fill it out online, or you can phone us and we'll fill it out for you and do a declaration that you are who you say you are and send your mail ballot to you, or you can pick it up however you'd like to get it. So we just want to encourage people to do this sooner rather than later, so that we can ensure that their mail ballots get mailed back or dropped off. They have to be dropped off here to our office if someone's dropping it off physically, because they have to be accepted by the chief election officer. No one else can accept them. So on general voting day, if someone realizes, oh, I haven't mailed my mail ballot in yet, they would have to come here and give it to me. So that was one of the reasons why we decided to have our offices open on general voting day, so that we could accept mail ballots and also allow people to vote, because there could be people from the rural areas that happen to be in Kamloops for the day, maybe doing some shopping or running errands, and they can come into the office and vote. And Ms. Satt's also going to be sending out the notice of election that you see up here to all the candidates and asking them if they would like to post this notice on their community boards or wherever, so that residents in the area, because not everyone might be looking at our website or looking at the local newspaper. So we're hoping to get this out to as many residents as possible.
Director Rice and then Rothberger.
On that note, so if somebody calls the main line, TNRD line and stuff like that, will they be directed somewhere, or will they have and request a mail-in ballot? And then where does that call go from there?
So I actually believe that we have our legislative services number up there. So it'll be one of us in legislative services that would get that call and
Thank you.
access it.
Thank you.
Director Rothenberger.
Yeah, could you make sure that information also goes to incumbent directors, even if we aren't running, because we could also help get it out through our various communications.
Yes, Director Rothenberger, sorry, I missed that. We were also going to send it to the all current electoral area directors as well.
Thank you. And Director Quinn.
Thank you. Just one last question. Are we going to be using the radio media to advertise the election at all?
We haven't, through the chair, director, we haven't arranged that at this point, so we could look into feedback on the option here.
It was just a thought. Thank you.
Okay, I'll turn it back to Agnes and Deanna.
That's it.
Any further questions? I think it's good information for those that are having elections within their area. Yeah,
Thank you.
Director Rothenberger.
Sorry, just a further thought about communication and advertising. One of the problems I've found in our elections is that people don't always understand where they are. That they are in the regional district, or are they in the city, or in some other municipality? What electoral area are they in? Is there an election going on? And right now I can tell you there's a lot of unawareness out there about that. How can we get the word out that there is an election going on and here's where you might want to look, and maybe the radio advertising idea is one way to do it, but we need to get people aware of when they even have a vote, because a lot of people don't know it.
Yeah,
And that's, I mean, that really contributes to the low turnout, because people just don't know that they have a say.
yeah, through the chair to Director Rothenberger, that is a very real concern, and that's something we've dealt with over the years quite a bit. And in fact, we have gotten mail-in requests from people within municipalities for the TNRD elections. So I know that through our communications department, we are putting notices out. Colton, I don't know if you'd like to elaborate on that. But we've got this e-advertising that we're hoping is going to create an awareness. The radio is something that we'll look into as well. Of course, we've got the conventional newspaper. Beyond that, in social media, Deanna?
And if I may, this is probably a good segue to Mr. Davies' presentation. he'll be updating you on the electoral area newsletter that's going out. And he has actually included election information in this newsletter, and that will be mailed out to all residents, if I'm correct.
That's right. So,
Yeah.
through the chair, Director Rothenberg, I'll add to that. So.
Do you want to come up here? Sure.
So now I'm on the hot seat. So that's something that we're continuing to work on, and we're going to continue to push in waves through the channels that we have through earned media that we can receive that way, and obviously paid media that Ms. Sad has talked about to raise awareness. So things like raising awareness where if you live on whether you're Indigenous or non-Indigenous, but you live on reserve, you are eligible to vote in the electoral area where your reserve is. We've heard questions on that from people in Sun Rivers, for example, and boosting the awareness to the information that we're now providing online, or encouraging people to contact TNRD election staff to get answers to the questions that they have about, where can I vote? What is my electoral area? So, for example, by the end of next week, I believe Ms. Sat mentioned that through with our GIS team, we're going to have a interactive map that shows you can look up your address and it'll tell you, which electoral area you're in, and you'll be able to find information through that tool about polling stations, where, when, and how to vote. So we're going to keep driving this. We're getting closer to the election now. It was a little bit intentional that we haven't bombarded people up until now, not until the candidates and the elections process has been in place. So we're in early stages for, continuing to boost that in our communities as best we can.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Agnes, do you and Deanna have anything further?
That's all from us, Chair Kershaw.
Okay, thank you very much for the presentations. We might as well continue on with Colton and into the election update. TNRD newsletter update, pardon me. Go ahead, Colton.
Thank you, Chair. Thanks for saving me the walk up here, and welcome to the wonderful world of communications. Brief PowerPoint to go through. This won't take long. I've handed out copies of each newsletter to each of you that will be mailed to addresses in each of the electoral areas. The printing has just gotten underway, and we expect it'll be in mailboxes of residents, businesses the week of October 3rd, probably more likely October 5th or 6th, which is about 2 weeks from now. So the process for this was first identified, as we talked about earlier, in the 2020-2022 strategic plan to create a semi-annual newsletter. This was identified as an action item to provide education, and transparency on TNRD activities to residents and taxpayers. That was part of the update I gave to this committee on March 10th, that the planning was underway for creating this newsletter. During the summer, late summer, we did finalize the format, the scope of this newsletter, format being double-sided 2-page newsletter, determining the number of items, subjects that we were going to include in each newsletter, and continuing with what the strategic plan called for in terms of making it semi-annual. So fall 2022 and spring 2023 will be the first editions, each fall and spring. Content planning was a time-consuming process to gather information from TNRD departments. We want to make this current. It is a newsletter, and we also want to touch as many or include items that reach as many residents as possible with this. So we had to sift through a number of ongoing items through departments to include in these newsletters. And then the design was the final work of the process, which took time as well. Then it comes to distributing. We've coordinated the printing. I mentioned that's now underway. Mailing will follow. Electronically, this digital version of each of these newsletters will be published on the TNRD website. We're going to aim to have that webpage go live. It's drafted to go live at about the same time that this will hit the mailboxes of residents. We'll be sharing further where possible. Social media is an obvious example of where sharing further means, email as well, potentially other avenues. So we've created a similar but different newsletter for each of the 10 electoral areas. We've included 8 items in each. If you were to look through the 10 versions, the content is region-wide. It's similar in each of the newsletters. On the second page, there are about 2 out of 8 items, or 2 out of 7 in some, that are tailored to specific EAs. The focus on all of the items in here is core services and key projects. One subject you might notice isn't included is utility related updates. We already do publish the Waterworks newsletter. Between sewer and water utilities, those only service about 10% of constituents, and we believe residents are well served by the Waterworks newsletter already. So that was a purposeful omission from this region-wide regional newsletter. So I've attached a few copies. Again, I've passed one of these on to each of you. Area B, Area E, you'll notice if I were to go back and come back here, that the front page is essentially the same on each of them, besides the letter and the photo, which comes from each electoral area. There's the information about library locations and mobile stops, which is obviously tailored to each electoral area. And then the bottom half of the second page is going to be different on each of the electoral areas, based on those being the more electoral area specific updates for each of these 10 newsletters. We also have a disclaimer on the bottom of the back page for a survey asking for feedback. Right now we have the survey drafted with 10 questions. We would put that out at the same time that we make the website, the web page on our website live in a couple of weeks' time from now. And we would hope to get good feedback that way from residents who either receive this in the mail or maybe are in a municipality or otherwise and happen to read it online. So moving forward, we'll be gathering that feedback from yourselves, the board, and obviously from the public in that public survey. In terms of raising awareness that this now exists, the support from our electoral area directors and the board in general is appreciated in helping make residents aware that we've started this initiative. And we'll be assessing metrics as best we can in terms of readership. I mentioned the digital newsletter metrics in terms of how many people access that landing page once it's live. We'll also be looking for perhaps spikes in some of the web pages that are linked in the newsletter to see if people are looking at that and then going on their computer and looking that up and looking for dates that might match any spikes in usage on our elections page, for example. So based on feedback we gather, we'll look to refine this where possible. Again, we're going to be putting this out twice per year. There are several items that we will aim to include in each of these newsletters. Solid waste touches every corner of our electoral areas. Fire smart initiatives are going to be growing and something that matters immensely from what we understand to our electoral area residents. Library is again the same thing. It's a good space to let people know of upcoming meetings. These can change, over the span of 2 to 3 months ahead of time when people are receiving this newsletter. But the more awareness we can give to people about our board meetings and our committee meetings, we feel people would be well served like that with that. So we'll be acting on feedback where we can. Just to reiterate some of the objectives from this newsletter, this was a goal in the strategic plan. Really, the main goal from communications is to use this as a tool to increase engagement with residents. We recognize we can't reach all our constituents online and from our TNRD civic office. This is one way to get closer to constituents who perhaps aren't accessing other resources or we may not otherwise reach, as we mentioned too. So in establishing this, we're hoping that it can create a consistent source of information on TNRD services and activities that people look for this twice a year. And we've set out some internal goals in communications for the amount of people we're looking to reach and what kind of feedback we're looking to hear. That's all I have, and I'd be happy to take any questions.
Anybody questions for Colton? Director Rothenberger?
Well, just one, I want to compliment you on the approach of localizing it to various areas. I think that's really important. And it's a great idea. I didn't realize you were doing that. I assume this doesn't replace in any way the utilities newsletters that go out with utility billings a couple of times a year. And I just wonder what your thoughts are on those newsletters, whether there are any changes or whether you have looked into that at all as to what to do with those, because I find those very valuable as well.
Thank you, through the chair to Director Rothenberger. No changes whatsoever planned to the delivery or the contents of the Waterworks newsletter. We're going to continue to mail that at the same time as utility bills are sent out to those customers. As I mentioned, you know, for the reasons explained why we left it out of this newsletter, knowing that I believe there's 1,120 water customers and several other sewer customers out of, you know, 12,000 plus addresses. So no changes planned to this or planned to the Waterworks newsletter.
Any further questions from Colton? I too would like to express that I like it as the newsletter specific to area. I think it's pretty good.
Good. Hopefully I've
Anything
answered all the
further?
questions
So-
ahead of time if there's none there.
Any more?
Thank you,
Colton?
Director. Thank you, Chair. That was all I had. Okay, thank you.
Okay, we're into roundtable. So we'll start off with Director Watson.
Thank you very much. I realize that some of us are choosing not to be here very soon, and some of us, that may be chosen for us. And I would like to suggest that if each one of us made a list of things that they would like staff to make sure that new directors know. Just, you know, point form, how to get their TNRD email on their phone, how to find things on the TNRD website, different things that maybe have escaped most people that you found irritating or helpful or something like that. Pick 10, email it, and we may have all the same thing, and that would mean that those things really do need to be taught to new people. Different things like that. I think that would be a good way to pass on our knowledge to the next board.
That's a good point there, Director Watson. Director Graham. Oh, sorry. Go ahead. I didn't miss.
No problem. Thank you, Chair. Just to Director
I
Watson.
muted you. Yeah, I don't have anything to add right now. Thank you.
Herb, I think you're off of mute. Thank you. Thank you, Director Watson, for that. I think that's good advice. I think that, you know, we feel like we've got the orientation figured out, but there's certainly things that I'm sure that are going to fall through the cracks. So if the EA directors would like to just send off an email to myself and maybe include Ms. Campbell, we'll make sure that we kind of cross-reference that against the kind of our plan with the orientation and make sure that we've captured it all. So totally great point.
Thank you. Director Rice.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, and I think it's a great idea too. For instance, Sally and myself, I know when I got elected, I was called by Hat Creek and asked why I missed all those meetings. I did not know I was appointed to Hat Creek when I got elected. So, and so basically I wasn't, but I was appointed to Gold Country and I was appointed to NDIT as a director. And those are the things that should a new director come in, know that they are on. This is 2011. This goes back to the beginning of time. And after a while, I realized, so I think that's a good point. Just a couple updates on my highway bonanza, my highway hat trick, I call it, 197. So the Lytton to Lillooet Highway continues to be one lane, flaggers 24/7. it's a fairly significant wait if you hit there at the wrong time, which I did once and other times, but the distance is 5 kilometers between flaggers. It's a little over 5 kilometers. So where the two flaggers are. So it's quite a distance there on Highway 97. Highway 1 continues to be, I came back from the Seahawks game that I was fortunate to go with my oldest, and we hit the train. You forget there's a train crossing on the Trans-Canada Highway now, and that was also quite a significant wait, not to mention, the other waits on Highway 1, which is still being, in repair. And then on where I live and recently moved back to the farm, Highway 8, the province is hoping to have it open between Merritt and Spencer's Bridge by the anniversary. That's November 15th. And I find that hard to believe that they're going to meet that, but maybe they will. And if they do, that will of course be a temporary road that will be very, I would say no low-lying cars should be going on it, but they do want it open to the public by the anniversary. So that's what the province is striving for. Then of course they will revisit the highway, start again at the beginning and build the permanent highway, which will take another couple of years. And of course, Lytton is an ongoing issue, of which I'm sitting on the Fraser Basin Council, which I think is a good thing because we're one of the facilitators of that rebuild, and the debris is cleaned up. If you've gone through Lytton lately, it looks like they're ready to start rebuilding, and they've basically begun doing a few things in there as of now. That's it.
Thank you, Director Rice. Director Schaefer.
I would just like to say that I had a meeting with the staff of the MOTI while I was down in UBCM concerning roads and in my area. And I've got some good news, and they were receptive to the other stuff I asked for. I asked for in East Blackpool, I would like them to, from Little Fort up to the Clearwater border, or even into Clearwater, is to ditch it, because what happens is when it rains, we get lots of potholes in area and deep potholes. And like I say, it's going to save on maintenance if they put ditching in, which they said that every year they are going to put a little bit of ditching in. They have started. And then Upper Clearwater, I asked them if they could daylight which they have started to. The only complaint I get about that is they're leaving all the bush behind. But they are starting to daylight so that people can see what's going on, because it's a very big tourism area. And then the best news is Jenkins Road. They are looking at doing an engineering study on left-hand turn lanes there. So it's on the radar, which is good after many years. And also I did ask them that next year, or could they double line it so that you can't pass at Jenkins Road? And they said that it can't be done now, but it can be done in the spring. So it was very positive, the meeting I had with them. So that was great.
Thank you, Director Elliott.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have just a couple of things. My area is in good shape for someone to take over, I think. There's a couple of things, garbage truck, which the newsletter says en route. Well, I can tell you it's been en route for quite some time and is likely not to meet the November retirement of myself, so I won't get to see the new one being launched, but it's had a really rough time getting fixed up, and so it's an ongoing thing. Also, I have let some money go for the Lac Lejeune dump site. I guess they're going to do a round road up there for easier for winter travel within the site itself, and that'll be done early, I believe, early next year. And just to reiterate that the boat launch and the park, the foreshore leases are part of a regional park, or a community park, pardon me, community park that is paid by the Area J electorate. The community park that's part of Savina and that they own all the land is part of the community assessment area. And it has one of, its own taxation. So I'm hoping that staff will be able to educate the new director on a couple of those kind of things. And we also have a critical section like on the highway that we pay for all the roads that come in onto Highway 1. And they're all at the boxes, the post office boxes. And so all of those are lit, thank goodness, because there's some pretty rough turning lanes off that highway for the people. The only one that's really bad is oh, now I've lost it. Rodeo Drive. Rodeo Drive continues to have small crash ups, and it's a 4-lane road. However, they need a left-hand turn lane there, and I don't know how they're gonna accomplish that. I tried a couple of times over the last couple of years with MOT. I could ask them to do that, and they say no. So other than that, Area J, I think, is in good shape, and whoever takes over can just move forward.
Thank you, Director Elliott. Director Gillis.
Thank you, Chair Kershaw. I don't really have much. Of course, like most of us, I went to the UBCM convention and attended ministers' meetings. And, you know, it was sort of I have to confess, I've come away from them in years past with a certain cynicism, but this year I left with some pretty hopeful feelings. And I think I'm really encouraged to hear what Director Schaefer had to say, in the sense that some of the things she's been advocating have already begun. So perhaps we're getting through. That's encouraging. I've continued to nag Jason Tomlin about my fire hall in Monty Creek, and I'm happy to report that it's progressing at about the same pace as things usually progress in this organization, but it is indeed progressing, and I'm sure Director Rothenberger is equally pleased as I am to see that it's happening. The Provincial Winter Fair is happening this weekend in Knutsford, and I would encourage people to attend that. I've managed to put some COVID relief money into the Provincial Winter Fair organization because they suffered very, very badly over the last couple of years. Needless to say, I've been somewhat preoccupied with the upcoming election. Not that I'm running, but that was someone quite close to me is, and that's a hotly contested matter in the city of Merritt. I have to say I've been watching with some fascination the progress of the Trans Mountain Pipeline, Line 2. Some of the things they do are just utterly amazing. And I keep hearing about projects that are funded or partially funded by Trans Mountain. I wonder what we're going to do for money once the pipeline is completed. I want to suggest that maybe we should encourage the immediate start of Line 3. Other than that, not a great deal to report from Area L. I think as Director Elliott said, her area is in good shape for her successor. I certainly hope I'm turning mine over in good shape for my successor, and I can promise that I have not and will not attempt to spend all the money in the gas tax fund or in my discretionary fund, as has been known to happen or attempted to happen here before.
Thank you, Director Gillis. Director Rothenberger.
Thanks, Chair. There's just one item I wanted to mention, but first of all, thanks to Director Gillis for mentioning me in the context of the Monty Creek Fire Service. This was his initiative all the way, and I was pleased to fall in line with it and support it, but I in no way take credit for it. And as to Trans Mountain, you should try living with it in your front yard if you want to talk about some of the amazing stuff that goes on. The item I wanted to mention has to do with what's known loosely as the Pritchard Beach Park, which is not at all a park. It's simply Crown land on the north side of the Pritchard Bridge and has been used increasingly over the years, not simply as a place for local residents to enjoy, but as a place for people to camp out, particularly during salmon fishing season, which is now just in the process of wrapping up for the season, but it has become an all year round issue and of growing concern. And something will need to be done, which won't be done clearly in the remainder of my term, but my successor will certainly need to deal with it. I was out last weekend, as I was telling Mr. Vieira just before our meeting started, and I have never seen it that busy. I counted more than 60 vehicles and around 30 RVs, campers, and so on there, and a goodly number of boats. A lot of them were out in the river, so I couldn't get a good count on that. But it is a hopping place during salmon season. But as I say, it's also becoming very busy year round. Now, a few years ago, as it was starting to grow, at the request of the Pritchard community, Director Gillis and I went halfers on the provision of a porta potty and a bear-proof garbage container and doggy bags to try to get control of the alarming increase in the amount of human and canine feces that was proliferating along the beach and in the nearby bushes. It made a difference. To do that, we had to get tenure from the province because it's Crown land for that tiny piece in order to place that there. It's a growing concern to the community. They feel they're losing their access to the beach, which is right in their community, and it is creating safety, sanitation, and environmental concerns. There are solutions to it, but they aren't easy ones. Either it should be turned into a provincial park by the province, or it should be turned over the TNRD, give the TNRD tenure to create a new regional park, or enforcement is absolutely necessary to make sure that people don't park there for an entire summer. Because by provincial law, they're limited to 2 weeks and it's not enforced. And that would make a big difference, but people, residents call the RCMP from Chase and they come out when they can to look at it, but there's no comprehensive program there. And the answer might be partially that overnight camping be banned, but actually some of the locals, they like to camp there once in a while too. They just, go from their nearby homes and go by and camp at various times during the summer. So I don't know if that's it, but if camping is not banned, then another answer might be to charge, and maybe charge handsomely at some times of the year for overnight camping. But who's going to manage that? And who's going to enforce it? That's the question. The province has simply not stepped up over the years. So the challenge, I guess, is to push the province, keep pushing the province to help out. And the province, believe me, has been requested many times over the years to lend assistance and has chosen not to do so. And so Mr. Vieira is doing that as we speak, trying to get the province to come to the table once again and solve this. In the meantime, by the way, Director Gillis, while you were at UBCM, I took the bull by the horns or the fish by the gills maybe, and authorized increase to the service on the porta potty 3 times a week. I don't know if you want to kick in for the cost of that or not, because but it should have helped somewhat and continue to help somewhat even after fishing season. So that's the situation at the Pritchard Beach. Growing concern to residents and general concern because of the the attendant issues that come with a huge crowd of people packing into quite a small area for a number of weeks at a time. Thanks, Mr. Chair.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Greg.
I would just like to add that I'm quite aware of all of the issues that have been raised by Director Rothenberger with respect to the Pritchard Beach, and he's absolutely right. Something must be done. It's an urgent situation.
Thank you. Director Laird.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I was quite surprised that I got in by acclamation. And it was a great way to start your next 4 years. It's interesting, when you first get elected as a director, you always have a list or some items that you want to have done. And in our particular area, it's taken up to 4 years of our term to get these projects done, either done or started. We partnered with the city of Merritt, and we've put a pickleball court into downtown Merritt with working with the city. We were able to fund improvements at the Nicola Valley Rodeo Association, and the Fall Fair building is now getting bathrooms. I think they finally got them started. That was a 3-year project to get that done. We've worked with the curling club in Merritt for the last year, trying to get funding in place to put a new roof on their building. And then we had the COVID funding, which we were able to hand out, and we selected between Director Graham and myself, we selected 9 different community societies, and each one of them got $4,500 from our funding. So it was a good year, good 4 years, and I appreciate all the help that I get from the staff, which a lot of these projects wouldn't even start without that. And I think we all need to be aware that how important our staff is. And I too went to UBCM. I came back with a couple of concerns. One of them is that increased planning for emergency BC. They're be coming out in, I think, spring session. And there's a huge downloading, I would call it, onto municipalities and area TNR regional districts. We're having to pay to upgrade all of the plans, emergency planning, long list of things that have to be done. The thing that was missing in the whole formula was funding. Like our staff is already going flat out, and now we're getting downloaded some more. Sometimes I think it would be nice just to say no. Maybe you should look at doing this yourself instead of, but I know that's not the right attitude to take. So that's going to be a real challenge in the next few years. And the other is the changing of the upgrading the fire code. According to what we were told, every fire department chief now will be responsible for doing commercial inspections in their fire protection area. So this is already added on to what a fire chief already has to do. And a lot of our fire departments have one employee, and that's the fire chief. So he has to run the fire department, and now he's going to be in charge of doing building inspections for fire code upgrades. And the same line, bottom line, it's great to put that out there, and all of BC is being impacted by this. But again, there's no funding. So again, that comes down to the local jurisdiction having to pay all the costs of putting these new programs in the provincial government is telling us that we have to have. I think we have to have a united voice and make sure that there's funding that comes along with the new legislation. And thank you very much.
Thank you, Director Laird. Director Quinn.
Last, but I hope not least, Area B is in pretty good shape for the new director. I'm sure those that are coming back will welcome her. She's new and she'll have that learning curve that we all went through. It's my intention to give her a small list of the stuff that is ongoing. And I'll spend some time with her going through that. I echo Director Laird's concerns about emergency planning, is where's the money going to come from? And also the building code that has the possibility of causing a lot of chaos in rural areas. If it's demanded by the province that we go to this step 5 thing, it's going to really impact any new construction. And I do believe that we should have good building codes when you go to build places, but there are limits to what you can ask people to do. I'm encouraged that there's a good program being put together by staff for all new directors. And I'm sure it'll be very educational and hopefully somewhat entertaining as well. So other than that, I just want to thank staff for the help they've given me over the years. And I look forward to watching occasional meetings online because we now got fiber in Blue River. Thank you.
Thank you, Director Quinn. As area director, I'd like to point out that I think some of the issues that Director Rothenberger has been talking about at Pritchard is what we're going to be dealing with at the Adams Lake Boat Launch, because it's getting busier and busier and busier, and it's congested into quite a small area. So I can foresee that being there. Everything else within the area, I feel is running very, very well. Our new director will be Director Jill Hayward, who's been quite connected to the area for an awful number of years through the newspaper and the Star Journal, and she will be, I imagine, stepping down from that role and taking on the TNRD director. I would also like to thank, because this is my last rural directors meeting, I'd like to thank everybody for the honor of being the chair of this committee for the last couple of years, and for the participation from all directors. So thank you very much on behalf of myself, who's been on it for years, and I'm going to miss the job in some ways, and I'm going to be happy to be gone in others. But anyway, thank you very much. So is there any further?
Director Graham did have his hand up, Mr. Chair.
Oh,
but I haven't, I see it's vanished.
Yeah, go ahead, Herb.
Okay, I'm going to write it down. My colleague, Director Laird, would bring forward all the things that we're bringing together, and they're all good. But one of the things that we just did was the efforts for reconciliation with First Nations that we're doing here in the Nicola Valley. RCMP, we went to their station and participated in the unveiling of a new sign, which I took pictures of, but unfortunately COVID took over, and I'll have to show them next time. But the sign that has RCMP in the middle, and then several, I think 6 or 7 different emblems of the tribes in the Nicola Valley. And if that wasn't enough, I spoke with one of the ladies that's in the Indigenous court, First Nations court, and she said, well, that's coming up tomorrow, 9:30. Well, guess what? I was there. Probably sped some COVID while I was there, but it's really interesting to see how these people that have got addicted, and they were the 3 that I saw were definitely addicted, and it doesn't seem to be anywhere for them to go, but the elders give them all kinds of ideas of what they can do. And I found it really interesting, and it goes on every 3rd Wednesday of the month, and I will be there. Thank you so much. Have a great day.
Thank you, Director Graham. Do we have anything further? And we'll move to adjourn. Thank you, Director Gillis. Thank you, everybody.